Isn't one of the bigger risks that we've had with the way we've been leveraging technology and marketing is we've been commoditizing the customer?
Welcome to The Array by Jacquard, the agentic enterprise platform that creates content that converts. On today's episode, we're delighted to welcome Scott Brinker, widely known as the godfather of MarTech. Scott has spent over 2 decades at the forefront of marketing technology as a MarTech entrepreneur, former VP of platform ecosystem at HubSpot, conference founder and advisor to leading startups, and author of the best-selling books like Hacking Marketing and The New Automation Mindset. He's also the mind behind Chief MarTech, one of the most influential publications in the industry and the creator of the iconic marketing technology landscape that has tracked the explosion of MarTech from a few hundred tools to over 15,000. Before we get to the conversation, how are you doing, Jasper?
I'm good. I just got back from Sweden. I know I've been traveling a lot for work recently, so I had to take a little R&R trip to Sweden. I visited a friend in Stockholm, and then after that, spent 2 days in a wonderful spa hotel in the archipelago. Basically just lay in a sauna and sort of cycled between that and some very cold water for 2 days straight, which was great.
Very nice. I know in the last episode we spoke about my trip to Japan, but I feel like I went to like one of those Japanese onsen. So between you and the Swedish archipelago and in a sauna and me in a Japanese onsen, we both spent the weekend doing a lot of R&R, except I feel like the jet lag from Sweden to the UK is a little different from South Carolina to Tokyo. So I feel like I've lost all that R&R.
Just coming home again.
It's just coming home on the flight. Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's jump into it. Scott has co-authored the MarTech for 2026 report, which explores how AI, agents, data, and evolving architectures are actually reshaping marketing. In this conversation, we'll dive into the reality behind AI and MarTech, the rise of agentic systems, and how marketers can navigate the shift from experimentation to real business impact. Welcome, Scott.
Great. Toby, Jasper, lovely to be here with you.
Thanks for joining. Looking forward to it.
So at the beginning of each one of these episodes, we have this a predictive model at Jacquard, which can predict what content is more likely to convert than others. And I go through this data set and I find insights. And we're going to ask some questions and we're going to see how many times Jasper gets this wrong, but we're going to see how both of you, which of these insights are true or false, or how much certain content can move the needle on engagement in CRM. So if I find...
it's become a recurring theme that I just get all the answers wrong. He sets me up for failure every time. Either that or I don't know my content well enough.
So I thought this was a really good one and something that I think makes sense, but it's interesting that the magnitude, which I'm already giving you guys insights. Experiential verbs outperform transactional verbs by how much? And you can give it to me in a percent or however you'd like to. But so book, celebrate, explore, those are examples of experiential verbs. Save, buy, or get would be a transactional verb. Why don't you go first, Jasper?
I'm going to say 10%.
Okay. Scott?
I'm an experiential sort of guy. I'm gonna go 25%.
Okay, Scott's closest to the mark once again. Jasper, you've done this so many times, Jasper, and you still get them wrong. The answer is actually 46%.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So Scott was closest, but experiential verbs vastly
relative difference.
Relative difference. Yeah. Okay. Relative difference. Yeah, not an absolute. Yeah, 46%.
Wow, yeah, if you've got a 47% converting verb, tell me what that verb is, please.
Yeah. This has maybe an experimentation question. This is a bit of maybe a hard one to articulate. What does you think is, and this is the top quartile of campaigns which have a large spread between the highest performing variant and the lowest performing variant. The reason why I did the top quartile, if you go to the end of the tail, it's 100% because there's outliers and all that kind of stuff. So we're looking at the top quartile of when, let's say you have an A/B test or a multivariate test with 10 variants, and this is for email subject lines. What do you think the average relative spread is. Does that question make sense?
Yes.
The difference
So
between
just
the
within
best
the
and the
top
worst.
quartile.
Yeah, no, the top quartile. Yeah. So what do you think of the ones which have a wide spread? What do you think that spread is on average for those top quartile campaigns? Jasper, you go first.
35%?
Okay. Scott?
I'm going to go a little bit bolder again. I'm going to say 80%.
80%. The answer is 29.6. So Jasper, you actually managed to get this one.
Making you look good.
It's unfair because it's our data set.
We'll have you
It's our
back for another
data set.
episode.
It's interesting though that is actually, that's quite a good quantifier for the difference in language, the impact language can have.
Getting the right
really
message.
is, and that's across millions and millions of campaigns. And so, that's, I just thought that was a really interesting little insight there. I'll tell you the statement and then we can maybe talk about it. It's 92,539 unique opening bigrams, which are the combination of two words. So save now, buy now, New York, whatever it is, there are 92,539 unique opening bigrams in 536,000 subject lines. This is just the data set we have. And I just thought that was a really interesting thing. It's basically saying there's very few best practices. It's basically saying it's very few just standardized ways of saying stuff. It's kind of all these campaigns are highly fragmented, and I guess there isn't really just one way of saying something that really works, right? Because that means there would be far fewer unique opening two-word statements. I just thought it's an example of why I think we'll talk about machine learning. We'll talk about, taking the data side of it and personalization and things like that. But I just thought that just quantifies the lack of best practices. There's if you think about subject line optimization, if you think about best practices with A/B testing, best practices with whatever it might be, best practices for copywriting, there still isn't something that really resonates on a global scale. And even templating as well. It's templating and personalization strings and all that kind of stuff. It just doesn't manifest itself in the data. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. Let's get into it. You want to start with our opening question, Jasper?
I'll kick us off. Scott, the godfather of MarTech is a very impressive title. I kudos to you for adopting that one or having it thrust upon you. I'm impressed by that. But obviously, what comes with that? You say you've been analyzing MarTech for nearly 2 decades. You've lived it, right? You've lived it by working at some of the hottest MarTech companies. What's been the most surprising shift in how marketing and technology meet today compared to when you started? Like, what's changed the most, do you think?
Yeah, well, I think it's the role of technology and the level at which it is incorporated into the leadership of marketing. Like when I first started on this a couple decades ago or so, like most marketing leaders weren't even aware there was technology in their organization. Sort of came as a surprise. Like, wait, what? That landscape? You're nuts. We don't have any of those. And you're like, no, actually, you have about 20 of them. And then, we started to move to this age of marketing ops, and you'd actually have these dedicated marketing ops teams and MarTech teams, but they were kind of down in the boiler room. Like, yeah. Those folks, they do the reports, some of the automations, whatever it is, to like where we are today now, where, again, pick your label for it, go to market engineering, AI, go to market, all this sort of stuff. Yeah, technology is just now actually baked in to the way in which marketing leadership thinks about their strategy and their operations. And so it's been kind of cool to see.
It's funny you say that. We did the previous episode. We just had Rustam Dastor, who's the head of marketing at MasterCard on the previous episode, who said exactly the same thing about he's been in the industry for 20 years. And it just the concept of digital marketing 20 years ago wasn't really... it wasn't even really a concept. And now it's almost everything. So It's and we actually did talk about, maybe we'll talk about this as well, but we did talk about how actually digital marketing and technology marketing, and now almost offline marketing is there's almost like this resurgence based on
everything comes full circle.
AI
It's
is
like flared jeans.
Yeah.
Everything makes a comeback.
Flared jeans is just like direct mail. That's what I've been thinking. Yeah, exactly.
One of the things in the intro we talked, I think when Toby was kind of teeing up the conversation, we talked about this growth. There's like something like 15,000 tools on the market now that you can choose from. So you've just done a report recently where you're talking about the gap between reality and hype of AI, but not just AI. I think there's hype even in more classical software practices. What do you think the biggest disconnect is between what people are being told and what's actually happening in practice is at the moment?
Yeah, MarTech and hype, they like sort of peanut butter and chocolate. They've gone together for a long time. I don't know. I mean, it's funny. I'll answer that, but the answer I'll give is the answer that we've heard again and again for years and years, but it is still actually legitimately where the gap is, which is the data. Everything we want to be doing, from like a really sophisticated way of leveraging the technology, whether it's AI or even along the pre-AI, sort of is predicated on having the right data, good data, and not just having it somewhere in the organization, but actually having the ability to access it and activate it and operationalize on it. If anything, AI has just sort of like accelerated that. The phrase you often hear here is like, you don't have an AI strategy if you don't have a data strategy. And as cliche as that is, I mean, it's true. One of the things that is particularly exciting about this generation of AI technologies is the fact that they're so good at being able to work with not just classically structured data that we have, like, okay, rows and columns and, a relational database, but they can take messy, unstructured data and audio recordings and these sorts of things and be able to synthesize on that and give us a chance to analyze and activate on it in ways were never really feasible, for most brands before. But still, you need to be able to have that data, get access to it, inventory it, be able to qualify it, govern it. It's more work than ever.
Do you think it's just the activation of that data, or do you think a lot of these AI tools can help with the collection of that data and to have a data strategy, or is it really that you need to get your data strategy kind of up to scratch first before you even start thinking about how you can activate that using AI?
Yeah, because generally speaking, the AI is not giving you a data strategy. You have to actually provide the strategy and the scaffolding around which you're then going to apply that AI. And like a great example would be like, so for instance, in a lot of technologies in MarTech right now, at the data layer, you hear about the idea of a semantic layer, this idea of like, okay, well, what's the layer where we're actually defining what these things mean? What things? Well, like, what do we mean when we say lifetime value? How is that actually calculated? Because, it turns out that the way the sales team is calculating this is, different than the way the product org is thinking about it. Marketing does it on a campaign by campaign basis, and like AI, it can, from its perspective, all of those are potentially valid ways. AI is happy to give you 100 more possible ways you might interpret that. But at some point in time, you have to decide, okay, well, what's the standardized scaffolding that we're going to use to align the organization around it? And that's pretty much on almost any data concept you can think of in marketing. There's a question of like, okay, what's the actual semantic truth of this?
And that doesn't seem to be something that is as a result of AI. That sounds like something that people should have been doing always.
True, but AI has expanded it on both ends. First of all, now we just are getting a lot more data. We have the technical feasibility to actually work with that data in ways that so much data got collected years ago and we had no way of working on it, but also the value you can get out of it. Because again, actually applying AI to be able to work with this data and help us, in marketing operations, it's phenomenal. But you have to get the data to the right place, have it defined, have it fit in a strategy.
It sounds to me, but based on that example you described, it's not just data. It's kind of it's structure and context as well. Because like the example you gave a great example of like lifetime value, and if we're all running an LLM instance in our organization, and you've got the three personas that you described, all talking to their respective agents, saying, "I want you to calculate lifetime value of a customer off of our data," and you could have the most amazing data in the world, where it's really easy to run that calculation. But there's the framework of what the actual calculation is, and each of them is going to get a different. They're all going to get a different response because the LLM is going to be personalized to their wants and needs, and it's going to be thinking about what their goal is in this kind of thing. So it's almost like you want a data strategy, but then you need almost an AI framework or a structure, like a business framework that layers on top of the AI as well. Is that how you would think about it?
Yeah, I mean, this self-service capacity that AI is providing is so incredible, right? It unlocks the ability for people to do so much that they just couldn't, before. But there is this trade-off. One advantage we had of the old yield days, when this stuff went through like very slow centralized teams, was at least those centralized teams were trying their best to provide some sort of standardization and governance mechanisms to it. Now that we're empowering people to do a lot more on their own, believe me, I'm generally a fan of that. I think the benefits far outweigh the costs. But one of the things that we really need to develop is this sort of distributed governance model to make sure that, like, okay, we don't want a Tower of Babel situation here. Like, to really take advantage of this new speed and capability, we've got to all be aligned.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even we think about, I know, individual members of the team. We want to empower them to use AI and to look at data sets. But sometimes people are looking at even different data sets, different timelines, and defining things in different ways. And they're doing things that we can never do before, but now that we're doing them, there's a level of standardization, I agree, has to be done. Otherwise, we're all just kind of speaking a very similar but slightly different language.
And some of the sycophantic nature that some of these AI engines, bring to the table is, the sales team is like, okay, but help me understand how what I'm doing with lifetime value helps really justify the work I'm doing, and the marketing, So it's, there's some incentive structures there that pull it apart too.
Nearly every company, and I think if it's not every company, or by this point, but they're still in the experimental phase with AI, right? And there's a very small percentage in this kind of full production. I guess the first question is, what does full production mean? And the second is, what's stopping them from all getting to that full production state?
Yeah, full production definitely is. This goes back to what we were just saying about the semantic layer. Like, how are you interpreting, full production? But I generally think of it as being something that isn't just like an isolated task, but it's when we start actually having this deployed in multi-step workflows. And they're not the experimental pilot workflow. They're like, no, this is a part of like our standard operating procedure of what we're doing. And this is changing fast, even since time has passed since that report came out, particularly around like content development. You're seeing people start to get like pretty good at operationalizing the process now with AI. And I want to emphasize with AI because it's, almost no one's doing this in a way of like, well, just let the AI go off and do this. Careful now, but having it incorporated into a managed process, yeah, it's effective. But that's also been the one we've been working with the longest. I mean, when the Gen AI thing sort of took off, in 2023, content was the first application that seemed obvious, to marketers. And so we've had a good 2-3 years to start to develop comfort with this, develop some of these experiments, get some of these pilots. But the reality is that is just a small slice of what's unlocking. So a lot of the things you still see in the experimental stage are people using this around like audience definition management, using it around data analysis capabilities. We're starting to get better and better at deploying some of these AI agents that are customer facing, whether it's like shopper concierge in e-commerce or AI SDRs and B2B or things like that. But they're It's still early, and that goes back to, why isn't more of this done in production? Honestly, in a lot of cases, it goes back to what we were just chatting a few moments ago, which is the data isn't solid enough, and if you don't have like the right data and the solid data for this, then a lot of those things, they're not reliable.
You talk a bit about context, the concept of context engineering, but I think also some of those examples you've just described, we haven't nailed the workflows yet. So the shopper concierge, there's been some hilarious stories where people are just using it using it like Claude to write their code for them, or you have things where we had an experience with a B2B SaaS agent trying to book meetings, and it basically said, I'll book a meeting with you in 6 months' time, when the person responded with a time slot for the meeting. So we haven't nailed the context workflow. And I guess that kind of feeds into that idea of context engineering, because without context, they can be awful to interact with, right? Without the right context. And I feel like we haven't quite, the reason why we're still in experimental phases, because we haven't actually nailed that workflow yet. And I know not what some companies are obviously doing better than others, but not everyone has nailed it yet. Just talk to us a little bit about how you think about context engineering and why you think it's so important.
Yeah, well, it's not only that it's important. Certainly it is, these agents at the end of the day, they have, sort of a limited working memory, sort of a limited ability to reason. Very powerful within that window, but still it's a window, and so getting the right instructions and the right working data and the, authorized tools or services for them to execute on. That's actually, it turns out that's hard work. And when you start looking at it, scale across an organization, it's a ton of work, which this is one of the things that makes me so optimistic about the future of marketing careers. Yes, a lot of disruption and a lot of change happening in marketing, but pretty much anyone I talk to, when you actually sit down and start to map out okay, what's all the work we actually need to do here to take advantage of what these new capabilities are going to be? It is a tremendous amount of work at every single level you can imagine. And again, it's different work, and I don't want to downplay the fact that it's requiring people to learn new skills, and they're getting out of their comfort zone. And I have a lot of empathy for the transition, but the opportunities are out there, and they far exceed the hours in the day right now.
Tell me a little bit about these kind of three agents of marketing that you've described. There's kind of the agents for marketers, these agents for customers, and the agents of customers. I think I'm describing that correctly. And tell me if I'm not. But we can all see different ways of AI manifesting itself in the marketing experience, whether it's Apple rewriting my push notifications into something that doesn't make any sense, or it's my own usage of ChatGPT, showing me different brands in a shopping experience, or it is using something like Jacquard to generate content that performs as a marketer. Can you just run me through those almost the definitions of those, and then how they all kind of interrelate with each other?
Yeah. Well, clearly one of my hobbies is organizing little logos onto slides and categories, So of course, in the agentic world, I'm like, maybe this is a chance for more little logos on a slide. But in all seriousness, we were trying to put some sort of structure around all these different kinds of agents that people are talking about, because the different kinds of agents here are having very different effects on how marketing is changing. So the three categories, right? Agents for marketers, which are tools designed to help marketers, exactly these things that are letting us create all this amazing content behind the scenes, do all this data analysis, incredible stuff. It doesn't directly touch a customer. Indirectly, absolutely does, but it's really us. Agents for customers are things we as marketers or go-to-market teams, we still own and control. These are things like the shopper concierges, AI SDRs, customer service chatbots, things like that. They're customer facing, and that creates a whole new.
So the AI so the agents for customers are brand owned agents that directly interface with the customer.
Exactly.
Understood.
Which is very different than agents for marketers, because now you've got dynamics with, like, the customer gets a say, right? What's that old thing about strategy? The enemy gets a vote, and agents for customers. The customer gets a vote on how that interaction is going to go. And asking the shopper concierge to write some code for them, things like that. But the one that's really the most disruptive to marketing is this third category, what we call agents of customers. Sounds like a subtle shift, but it's actually a huge one, because these are just agents that customers use. We as marketers don't control. This is like, the most obvious example is when people are using ChatGPT or Claude to be able to do research and evaluation, discovery. Most of the time now, we don't not only do we not control that conversation, we have less visibility into that than ever. I mean, even with this whole new field that's emerging around AEO, the GEO, whatever the child from SEO is, yes, it gives us some attempts to try and work with that, but for the most part, it's terra incognito. And I think we're going to see a lot more, because we showed a few examples in that report, but those are just agents where customers have been doing research and conversation. We are on this brink of a more agentic commerce world, where these agents are going to start to take more and more actions, or take step potentially to even negotiate for actions on behalf of those customers. And that's going to be pretty disruptive. I mean, again, I'm a glass half full sort of guy. I'm like, great, well, this will be a whole new generation of how marketing thinks about not only how do we serve the humans in our audience, but how do we also make sure we're serving the agents of those humans as well, too.
And we were just talking about that on the last episode around these agents of customers, where it almost commoditizes a brand's value proposition, where suddenly it's you, these agents almost negotiate on your behalf, or ChatGPT shows you something that's hyper personalized to you based off the value proposition of brand and your interests. And so as a result, perhaps the brand that has the cheapest product, or that, whatever it might be, it removes the value of the marketing element to some extent, and kind of commoditizes that value proposition down to its raw material. And I think that it also opens up opportunities perhaps for different channels. This is where we started talking about the direct mail stuff, where we started talking about, is there other opportunities to almost bypass the LLM? But also, the LLM becomes the customer to some extent. It becomes the interface to which the marketer has to communicate through. How can you prepare a marketer to think about all of that? You're right about AEO and GEO being kind of almost obfuscated in terms of how getting through it. How can a marketer even begin to navigate all of that?
Well, hopefully this isn't completely new, because, we've had 25 years of at least a singular version of that reality, where with Google and search engine optimization, we're like, okay, well, we are actually selling and marketing to a human, but we have to make sure we engage with that Google bot the right way, because it's going to be a conduit, in which we reach, humans. It's just, now it's multiplying, and the sophistication of those conduits are becoming greater. But it's that sort of a view. It's like, there are going to be things we need to do to make it easy for those agents to work with us and get the right perspective, on what we have to offer. But still, at the end of the day, for most things, it is ultimately going to be a human, that makes the decision about what do I want, maybe I'll set up the agent to, automatically renew my toilet paper. But when it comes time to plan my family vacation, sorry, I'm not just going to say agent, you go figure this out. Just, tickets will show up. I have no idea where we're going, but I'm sure the agent got us perfectly fine there. There's something you said actually, by the way, that really, I don't know, this might be a little bit snarky, but you said the concern that brands have of those AI engines with agentic commerce, almost starting to commoditize the brand. And I can't help but wonder, isn't one of the bigger risks that we've had with the way we've been leveraging technology and marketing is we've been commoditizing the customer. Like we're really in this mode where we're like, yep, no, it's numbers. The agent can do this. The agent can handle these things. These are just, like metrics on a dashboard to us. I don't know, maybe a little snarky there, but I somehow feel like the solution to both ends of that are kind of the same thing there, which is there's a relationship and a affinity around brands that is very much the degree to which those brands legitimately have a connection, with their customers. And I think we have to be just as careful of delegating too much of marketing, to the AI as we should be concerned about the customers delegating too much of, the buying process to AI.
It's an interesting thread because do you think, we've seen over the last 20 years a big shutdown in the concept of kind of physical spaces and places where you go to buy things. Like, a lot of it has shifted online. We have amazing kind of service when it comes to receiving things at our houses and things like that. But it's kind of an interesting thread because the cost of various different things is going to come down, right? The cost of production of certain things is going to come down as a result of having more efficient machines helping us to do it. But the need for humans to have that kind of physical connection and a bit more of a physical connection with the brand and things that they, kind of believe in might resurface and actually push us out of our house, push us out of our houses and back into kind of physical location. Do you think we'll see a resurgence of kind of like more in-person shopping and more in-person kind of purchasing again? Or
before you answer
that,
I actually have an opinion on this because I saw something really recently that I thought was fascinating. Because you see all these AI hype things where we're either ending up in some nuclear holocaust, or everybody's going to lose their job, or it's a total abundance, or it's just nowhere in between. And I went back and I asked ChatGPT to show me some kind of predictions in the year 1999 about what technology, how the world was going to change from the .com kind of era. And it talked about how there won't be a retail store by 2005. And that there will be no brick and mortar shopping. You can now buy it online. And, I don't know if Amazon was really becoming a thing quite, maybe it was at least books back then. And I just thought it was you could see the logic in the prediction, right? It made sense. Okay, well, if it's cheaper and easier and people can get it straight to the door. But I also think there was a nuance around, to your point, Jasper, the brand experience that people still want today. It's shifted a lot, but there's certainly shops down the road from me. I can go shopping. I can walk into a store, and in many cases, depending on the product, I don't really like the experience of shopping for washing up soap. That's not an experience that I like. I'll buy that online, but there's a lot of brands and experiences that I do want to have. And I'm not sure that, I think AI is going to have a similar impact. I don't think those go away. And to your point, Jasper, I think maybe they actually, there's a greater, like that offline stuff where brands have a great opportunity to shine through. Retail has a greater opportunity for brands to shine through than maybe
when they lose a differentiated experience. Yeah,
they lose a little bit of that online, so they have to kind of regain it in the physical world. Scott, what do you think?
How did we start this conversation? It was the fact that experiential verbs, resonate better than transactional ones. That kind of sums this up.
Yeah. No, totally. I think it's an interesting. I know, Jasper, you love your Italian clothes shopping. Jasper always talks.
I always have this
clothes shopping in Italy.
I always have this thing. I'm married to an Italian, and it is different. And this comes back to the kind of cultural differences. It is different there. People like going to buy clothes in store. It's their preferred, and the concept of a boutique is really strong, where you have like a personalized shopper that like curates a store for you kind of thing. And I'm like, I don't think we've nailed that in the digital ecosystem. Like we talk about personalization in MarTech. Like I don't think no one has created a version of that amazing shopper system, like where you're putting a jacket on and they're like, why don't you try the jacket with this shirt just to see if it fits? And they know that they're putting a shirt on you that's going to look great. And you end up walking out the store with both of them. Like personalization in the digital ecosystem has not nailed that.
Yeah,
that
and
scenario.
it's sad to say that apparently the metaverse isn't actually appearing here as soon as it was promised. So,
Yeah.
sorry, Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think I've ever been in the metaverse, but I could probably tell you right now that wasn't going to replace. At least it didn't feel like it was going to replace the Jasper buying his Italian jackets anytime soon. I have a question about kind of going off topic a little bit, but about just MarTech and SaaS. And there's lots. I actually wrote a piece for the Drum about the SaaS apocalypse and how I think it kind of misses the point a bit. But there is an interesting point of view around these kind of AI budgets of these companies. We have an AI budget at our company, and our engineers build obviously software, and we consume a lot of tokens. How do you think how MarTech can be impacted by these budgets being squeezed? Do you think that this kind of mandate for brands or companies in general to lean into AI is going to result in budgets being squeezed so much that it puts the MarTech SaaS landscape at risk? Or do you think that's a mischaracterization?
As a the perfect consultant's answer, it depends. I think the reality is we need solid infrastructure in our MarTech stack more than ever. Again, going back to what we were talking earlier about, the data layer, the coherence around like the governance for these things. I think that's actually a reason why it's entirely possible our spend on some of these MarTech platforms that provide that foundation might actually grow. I think the SaaS apocalypse, by the way, in the market is not so much a function of the reality of that value today, because actually most of these companies are growing, profitable, crazy. I think the SaaS apocalypse is more of and this is not investment advice, but, it's more of a perspective that, hey, we used to be able to extrapolate the value of these companies out 10, 15 years and, know somewhat predictably what it was going to look like. And just today, we kind of acknowledge like, I'm not quite sure what the world is going to look like 10 years from now. And so, this compression of multiples, I actually think is quite rational without it being interpreted as just traditional software is dead. No, I don't think it is. I think it's just like all the rest of us is navigating a new and uncertain future and, can't rest on its laurels.
I feel like there's competing narratives on, not maybe competing, maybe adjacent narratives. One is that, IT budget might be squeezed by, everybody vibe coding their own stuff. The flip side of that is the vibe coded products themselves are going to replace SaaS, which I also think is a bit misguided, but I could see why somebody might see there's value there. And I agree. There's also just a general kind of uncertainty modifier being applied to a lot of this stuff. You mentioned, investors don't know what the world's going to look like in 10 years. What do you think the world's going to look like? In your experience in the last 20 years, what do you think the world's going to look like?
I have no idea what the world's going to look like in 10 years. But I will say, like on the shorter term horizon, I think this idea of vibe coding apps and whatnot, I think is less about replacing certainly not replacing commercial infrastructure. Nobody wants to vibe code their own cloud data warehouse, possibly replacing some very specific point solutions, particularly if not so much that it is cheaper for us to replace that point solution with something we vibe coded ourselves, but because maybe the point solution we had, it was the best we could have at the time, but it didn't really quite fit the use case we wanted. And now by vibe coding something very specialized here, we're able to tailor something much more crafted to our particular vision of how our business should run or how a particular customer experience should be delivered. And that's what I think is really the exciting part. Now, if you want to get a little bit, dark about the budgeting side of things, honestly, yes, AI, the spend on AI is growing. how much of that takes away from existing software spend? How much of it takes away from existing human resource spend? Right? That's actually the big tension, and the answer is, it depends.
Surely the value of all these AI capabilities massively changes the top line and the bottom line. And then as everyone's making more money, at least that's what everyone would have you believe, right? And therefore, we're hiring more and we're buying more software.
I saw a fantastic post literally 2 days ago where someone said, because of the cost of tokens, we've decided to hire a junior engineer to handle the boring tasks. And someone had responded to it like, "This is the insane time we live in. We've just invented human resources for the purposes of completing a job." Kind of thing. Before we even got rid of the jobs completely.
Humans have replaced the need for AI, basically.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what's going to happen? At the moment, all of the tokens are subsidized, right? So if they all go to full value, like, all of a sudden it doesn't make sense to replace. It only makes sense to do very, very targeted deployments of AI because it's so expensive to run. So we really don't know what happens until we can get the economics right. And in fact, one of the questions I wanted to ask you before was, how do you think foundational model providers, obviously the unit economics don't make sense at the moment for them, right? They need to figure out how to monetize. And we were talking a lot about kind of agents of customers. Do you think that they're going to start data exposing capabilities for marketers, like even more so than just the ads, like for people to get insights? Do you think that's going to be a revenue stream for them or not?
The market is going to go along with that. I think actually, honestly, these conversations people have with these AI engines, sure, the data is like the richest ever, but it's sort of like, oh, hi, marketer, can I send you my personal diary that I've been, like this? I trust you. You'll use this data well, and it's good. I just don't think, the world is collectively going to agree to that.
It's like one of the first use cases was like upload your blood test results and give me advice.
Here's my family DNA. What could go wrong? What could go wrong?
You could do some great advertising off of that, though.
Oh God, that's the dystopian world which we're trying to avoid. All right, let's wrap it up. I'm just going to ask you one final question. If you could give one piece of advice to marketing leaders, kind of trying to navigate this rapidly changing MarTech landscape, what would it be?
Let me answer it this way. So the Lake Wobegon effect. The thing of like, hey, it's the town of Wobegon, Lake Wobegon, where all the children are above average, and you're like, wait, how can that be? I kind of feel like in this day and age, particularly in marketing, we are all experiencing the inverse Lake Wobegon effect, which is almost everyone I talk to feels like, no, we're below average. Like, we're just way behind on this because this stuff is just changing so fast. No one can keep up with all of it. I do this 24/7. I'm a complete and total MarTech nerd, and I can't even begin to scratch the surface of what's happening here. And I say this just simply to be like two things. One, you're actually not that far behind. Pretty much everyone is, in that same boat. And second, the only way forward through this is not to somehow have this expectation you're going to get your arms around all of it. It's just like every day you wake up, you're like, all right, what can we learn today? What can we experiment today? Let's, again, push ourselves a little bit further out of our comfort zone because we know the world is changing. I think marketing leaders that do that for themselves, but also really lean into encouraging their teams to go through that just continuous discovery and psychological safety around, what is just going to be a period of exploration. What a wonderful thing. It's almost like I imagined in, 15th, 16th century, explorers, discovering the world. This is what we're in marketing now. So.
Great answer. Scott Brinker is known as the godfather of MarTech. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, my friend.